they need to be aware that working with these reflexes might be almost a more permanent type of solution for what is going on in the body and the brain, because we're forming those new connections and we're making the pathways more efficient. So it's basically, for me, I always explain it to them, it's a more permanent type of solution than, for example, a medication, which is very temporary, because as soon as that medication is worn off, then the symptoms come back. So that's just a temporary or a quick fix, where working on these reflexes might not be a quick fix. Depending on the age, depending on how long they've had this reflex retained, depending on their environmental factors and a lot of other different factors. So it might take some time to see the reaction that they were hoping for. Even though we might notice small changes already, they might be hoping for a specific reaction or a specific improvement, and if they're not seeing it immediately, they tend to lose hope. So we need to explain to them that it's not a quick fix, it's not a temporary solution. Remember, it takes longer because it might be a more permanent solution to the problem. So I need the parents to understand that, and the more they help at home with activities, extra stimulation, extra sessions. For example, that little boy that we had now for 2 to 3 months that improved that much, he's been coming to me for sessions 3 times a week. Plus, they've been helping with activities at home. So we have seen a quick reaction, but the amount of effort we put into seeing those results was quite a lot.
So there is some value in saying with the reflex, the word repetition is something that's very, very important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes they, especially the person bringing the child for a session, they look at me funny, and then I realize, but it's now maybe the 3rd session that I've included some of the same type of movements or same type of activities, and then I try and explain to them that repetition is key. Sometimes that body or brain system needs a little more extra of that same type of movement or that same type of activity, just to have that pathway fully set and get it fully formed in the brain. So sometimes, yes, it looks like I'm doing the same thing over and over, but the brain actually thrives on repetition. So repetition is key.
Is key.
Definitely.
And that makes a lot of sense then, that when you use the word reflex coaches, it's actually because it's not just a once-off session.
Yes.
It's working with that individual. And what I also understand from what you're saying now is everybody's going to be different.
Yes.
So we can get like inspiration from this mom and the caregiver with this child that's 5, but we need to keep in the back of our mind that when we're working on our own reflexes or our child's, that they will be different.
Yes. So we're not seeing the exact same results with each person that comes through the door. Like I mentioned earlier, there's various factors that might influence that development, depending how far back they've had these reflexes for, how long they've been retained, in other words, how strongly they are retained, because it takes 250,000 movements to integrate one reflex. So some people are closer to 250,000, others are closer to 0. So depending on where this reflex is at that point, how much movement they'll need, how much effort we'll need to put in to have this reflex integrate in the body. And then other various factors as well. So I've had clients that I've worked with that we haven't seen huge results, but because there was still some emotional conflict at home, for example. So that's a factor that contributed to them not showing huge progress, even though they were also 5. So we've got 2 5-year-olds. One had huge improvements, one didn't, but the environment was different. So because he was going through a little bit of emotional thing as well.
So what I understand what you're saying there is that the emotions, if I'm not feeling emotionally safe, that could be a trigger for my body to say, look, this is a survival situation. We need to draw from those reflexes so to protect ourselves.
Yes.
But in the meantime, it's actually not that threatening.
Yes.
It's just my perception of that specific incident or place that I am.
Yes.
So what kind of triggers are we looking at? Are they like big things, or could it be a small thing that could make these reflexes? Does that vary as well?
Yes, it does. It does. So it depends on how sensitive the little system is. So if they have a lot of reflexes that are heavily retained, they need a lot of work on their reflexes. In other words, they might get triggered more easily. And then with certain reflexes, because they're linked to an anxiety type response, to that fight and flight type response, because if they have those reflexes, then they might have continuous reactions and bigger reactions than somebody that does not have their reflexes as retained, and they are more in control, basically, not living as reflexively as the other children are, or other individuals are. But it's very interesting with the when you said about the coaching, it's not always just your client, the child that you are coaching, to help integrate the reflexes. Throughout this whole process, you're basically coaching the family unit, or you're coaching the teacher that's working with the child that's bringing this issue to you. You're coaching everybody around that person and yourself as well, so they can basically cope better with this, whatever's happening. Because sometimes they go through the terrible twos, and then we have to reassure the parents that it's okay, that it's not something major, it's not something they're doing wrong, it's not something to be worried about. So we basically need to coach the parent. And then when the teacher comes to you and tells you that this child is having this reaction in class, he's having behavioral issues,
yes.
Focus and concentration is out the door, they cannot do any classwork, then we also coach these teachers and explain to them that this little mind-body system is under pressure because of these reflexes. And when they understand that better, they can actually assist the child better. So it's such a nice process to be able to coach and be a reflex coach, even though you're not specifically doing just work on a reflex. You're coaching others with information regarding the reflexes and the and how it's got an effect on that person and everybody around them.
Sure,
So
that's very, very interesting. Well, I don't know if people feel the same way, but what I've seen is that families are under a lot of pressure, but they tend to not connect with each other anymore because they're just sort of going through. And if you've got a child that's got a specific issue, like, for example, autism or something like that, it actually affects the whole family.
yes, it does.
It impacts everybody. So if one starts, integrating those reflexes, if I may use that word, or getting the system back to a more natural way of learning, then actually you're bringing the family together, like you're saying, because you've got now mom involved. And yes, we might be going through the terrible twos, but there's bonding.
Yes.
It seems like that you're making reconnections, and so it's not just something that just is happening to one child. It's bringing that family unit together. And,
Yes.
Yes.
I also had a autistic boy. He was also about 4 or 5 when he started with me. It's quite some time ago, so I'm just trying to remember all the detail. But with him, I saw a huge reaction within a week. And again, it makes he's had greater progress than the previous child that I've mentioned in a shorter time. But again, it depends on his development, yes. So within a week, the mom reported to me that she actually could go to the shops with him.
My goodness.
And where she previously couldn't go anywhere. So she was getting depressed because she had to stay at home with him the whole time because it was too overwhelming for him to
So
go
she's got to
anywhere.
get somebody to look after him in order for her to go shopping.
To go shopping or
Sure.
go do any type of errand. So she was getting depressed because she had to stay at home and she doesn't know how to help him. But she wanted to make it better for him. And he was an extreme picky eater. So she had to cook or make. She actually made chicken nuggets and chips 3 times a day.
So she really actually needed to get to the shop.
Exactly. So, and when they came for a follow-up visit, his brothers actually came along. And they're neurotypical children, so they don't have the same as he does, the autism. But the brothers were so excited for their little brother because they were older than him.
Oh my gosh, you see here again, now you see them coming together.
Yes, and then the brother was so excited and he was telling me how they could go to the shops and his brother wasn't crying and they were all clapping. They were all clapping for him and they were cheering him on because he was talking more, he was using bigger words, he was making longer sentences. They could actually communicate with him, play with him more. So the eldest brother was actually in tears.
Oh my goodness.
Because it was made such a huge impact.
Exactly.
For them to have their brother.
This child is acting reflexively. My brother's spoiling everything for us. You know, you can see the disconnect in the family. And now because of you working with the reflexes and coaching them through it, they're able to reconnect. So there's a lot of, how can I say it, hope for families. And that one little thing, we can go shopping.
I know, and it sounds so trivial. I mean, going to the store for bread and milk, it's such a trivial thing.
Yes.
But for that family, it was a huge deal
we
to
don't
just...
know what people deal with.
Exactly. So, and then for the brother to just hear his brother say bigger words or to have the pleasure of playing with him. Without his brother being upset or too sensory sensitive to actually play with him because it upsets him too quickly. So they could actually enjoy being a family more. And that was lovely to see. That's really lovely to see. Yes. So, and it's amazing actually where the older kids, and in both these cases with the 2 5-year-olds, they have older siblings. And in both cases, the children never held it against them.
You know,
they have so much love for that little brother, but they'll love him regardless. So having that big change where they didn't expect him to change.
He's being loved even more now.
And now to see that admiration and that love for that child because he's progressing, he's getting somewhere, and the 5-year-old I mentioned first, his sister actually wrote me a note on my whiteboard the last time. She asked if she could write and draw on my board while I was working with him. So I left my cookies and stuff with her, and she was drawing things and showing me what she's drawing. And as we finished up the session, she said goodbye and they left. And I checked the board and she wrote there, "Thank you very much because you're making such a big difference for my brother."
Oh my goodness.
So, and she is 11. So for an 11-year-old to notice such a big difference in her little brother, to feel it worthy of being up on a board, to me that was just very special. That they...
Sure. Yeah, so even though you're putting in some effort and doing these things, there is reward. It's not like you continuously work on something that you're not going to see the results. But we need to be open, like you said, depending on where that child is in their, development and how much of the reflexes are integrated.